Hi, Steve.
Hi, Jim.
Throughout the, now 80, almost 80 episodes of our podcast, that I don't use this platform to actively promote the record store, right?
Yeah, correct.
Well, I'm going to break that rule today because I can now unequivocally say, and you know what? Those other big indie stores, Noble, Spin Me Round, In Groove, those guys can feel free to fact check me all they want. But I can say now with utmost confidence that Radio Wasteland Records has the largest selection of Herbie Mann albums in North America.
Wow. Congratulations.
And welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. Steve, please try to contain your excitement at the Herbie Mann news. I'll ship what I can to you.
I kind of thought about just taking off my shirt and doing this with so my hairy chest could show.
with the flute, of course. Yes, my name's Jim, and I own a record store, and sometimes that's a challenge.
And I'm Steve, and I'm a record collector who owns no Herbie Mann albums. But I guess I could now if I want them.
You could if you wanted to, and I may send some VLCT your way. Just get set for a big package.
Awesome.
We'll explain what this is about here in just a couple of moments, because as always, this kind of ties into our big subject matter today, which is how many records are too many records? Is there such a thing as too many records in your collection? That's going to be a good one, especially from Steve's viewpoint, because you're on your second time around, so to speak.
Yeah. Still haven't really learned a lot, I think, but we're doing better.
You're getting there. So we'll get to that subject here in just a couple of moments. But every week, as always, since this is a vinyl community podcast where folks love to show off the more recent additions to your collection, which is what we're talking about. I did good this week, by the way, but we're going to show off some of the new pickups. What did you bring in this week, good sir?
Well, if we had done this yesterday, as of 6:00 last night, I had nothing.
Oh my.
But then we went to this, it's like a half price book that's called Second and Charles, where they sell used albums and books. And so actually, I had something come in the mail late yesterday, too. And what I had come in late was this is Lush, and the album is Split. That doesn't matter. It's all shiny anyway because the stuff's on there. This is Lush's second album. Lush, this came out in 1994. You have the feedback type guitars, the dreamy type vocals on here, a little bit of shoegaze, a little bit of dream pop. It's kind of a mixture, but pretty good stuff. To me, you're going to get a Lush album. Split is the best one to get. Their next one, they get more into Brit pop. So I had that come in. I'd ordered that one, but then I went to that record store, Tenarwin. Aman Iman. And this came out in 2007, but it was on CD. It's been released on vinyl now. And just desert blues from the Sahara. These guys were rebels. They were fighting in some of the desert wars that were going on, but they were musicians also. And so now, they live out in tents. They play around the world. But when they're playing around the world, they still don't live in their tents. And just great desert blues. You have this kind of a feed happening, a certain kind of drone, very hypnotic, trance-like music. I'm a big fan of this group. I have quite a few of their albums. The Flood washed out a bunch, but slowly bringing them back in.
Cool.
You probably remember this group from the 80s, the Long Riders.
Oh, you bet. They found Lewis and Clark by then.
Yes, they did. Finally. But
by now they should have.
They had that big indie hit, Here She Comes, which isn't on here. That was on their first EP. But if you like Birds, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, ta-da, there we go. Graham Parsons, the whole thing. They're bringing in the country punk, kind of.
country alternative, not quite jangle. I would
Yeah,
equate them to things like the Hoodoo Gurus almost.
yeah, yeah. Very, very much country alternative. Very nice. So used to have that. Used to have this one, John Vangelis and Friends of Dr. Cairo. Uh, this has the song Friends of Dr. Cairo, which came out in 81. I remember I was in Kansas City in a car going to work, and all of a sudden that comes on and go, well, that was just the coolest song in the whole wide world. So John Anderson and Vangelis. I guess this is kind of prog, which, it's amazing that I liked it. It's the best song on there, but it was super cheap, so I picked it up. Speaking of super cheap, John Mellencamp,
Yep.
for $4. What a class. I actually did not like John Mellencamp in the 80s because he was so just pop or whatever, on the radio. It wasn't the alternative stuff. It wasn't cool, Jim. But this has pink houses. I've learned that I can accept him and like his music. So, that's just me growing and maturing with age that now I can handle. And I think he's older than me anyway. So that's
He's growing and maturing too. There was a thing a couple of weeks back where I think he yelled at an audience member for talking during his talking.
Hankerous, isn't he?
Yeah. Get off his stage porch.
And then the last one was a group called UK, which I thought was actually something completely different. And it's prog. Bill Bruford's in it. I don't like it whatsoever. And it's going back. I mean, it's like, I was thinking UK, is that like Ultravox or something? Oh, no. I mean, now prog lovers probably really like this. Because it has Bill Bruford in there, I guess. John Winton. No, not for me.
Not for you. Not for you.
Well, I kept a receipt, so that sucked. And I paid those other ones. I got very good price. I was very happy with the pricing. This one, no, it was
not so much.
Way overpriced and sucks.
I hope you didn't,
though, Jim.
Well, first off, I was going to say, I hope you didn't feel pressured the night before a recording when you didn't have anything to show. I hope that didn't pressure you into buying them.
No, not whatsoever.
I had just a very slow week bringing stuff in as well. I mean, we were doing stuff here at the store, and I did get some stuff imported and cleaned and cataloged. This next one I had owned, and I think we've talked before about my lack of affinity for compact disc when that came about. I stuck with vinyl while everybody else was not everybody, but most everybody else was diving into CDs.
You and me.
And I can count, I think in my lifetime, I've only purchased, I've had other CDs or given to me or and the like, but I've only purchased commercially probably about a dozen compact discs when they were new in the 80s. This was one of them. I actually had purchased in the 90s a CD copy of Hoist because I was kind of thought maybe I could get into Fish a little bit. It's good. I like it. And like I said, I played the CD when I had that. And then this has been reissued just last Friday, another reissue. They have reissued it previously the year before. This came out, as I said, 94, but there are only 4 vinyl versions officially on Discogs. 2 US reissues in 2016, one called Laser Beam Green and Blue in 2023. And this one this year, last week, it said it's called a Down with Disease Green, although it's almost identical. And it's the hype sticker says laser beam pressing as well. So it's just a repressing of last year's. I like this album, and this is a lot. I might take some heat here. I'm not a Fish fan by any means. This one I think was their most tolerable for me. I know a lot of folks dig them, and that's cool, but I just could never really get into them when I thought I should have. And so when this came, this is has not been added to the collection officially yet. It's still a open store copy for quality control purposes. Let me show you what the Hoist, the laser beam. You can see the green. That's actually a deep green. Looks a little darker, I think, in this, but it's got the laser beam colors in there. I like it, and I still like this album. A couple of really cool songs on there, "Down with Disease" and "The Sample in a Jar" has just been a favorite song of mine through here. And "Scent of a Mule" is a little weird. "Wolfman's Brother." What I don't like about this, it does sound great, but what I don't like is they split it up into a double LP.
Mhm.
It's still a 33, so we're good there. But I find myself, I was playing it here in the store, start aside, and then I start going to do something, and then the next thing I know, I look over to the table, and I've got to go flip it. The only thing worse would be a 45 RPM 7-inch.
So during the 90s, did you just not buy music because there was no vinyl in the US? I mean, at least
I still managed to buy vinyl back then. I
how'd you
still
find
did.
that?
I lived in Marquette, and there was a record store there for a short time till they ended up closing in 93 or 4, I think, somewhere in through there. But I still managed to get it. This record store in Marquette that I would go to had new releases. And I
Wow.
picked up a lot of stuff there too. So the only other new-ish add to the collection, and this is actually pretty cool. This is in my Michigan collection. It's a group called Sky, and I do have 2 albums from them now. This first one is, oh shoot, I forget the name of this. Let me call the name up again. "Don't Hold Back" from 1970. Now, if you look really closely at this, Steve, the gentleman in the center, does he look somewhat familiar to you in the band Sky?
No.
If maybe I were to show you a late 70s picture of
Oh,
him
how
there.
about that? Okay.
That is Doug Feiger from the Knack. They hit it big in 79, but prior to that, he was in a Michigan group called Sky that Discogs they call it pop, rock, power pop. It's 1970, so it's not quite that power pop yet. You can tell and you can hear some of that early stylings that he carried into the Knack, but it is still pretty much almost just the classic rock sound, folk rocky, a little psych in there as well. This one came with a pretty cool poster. And then their second album from a year later called "Sailor's Delight," that is also by Sky. So I've got both of those in the collection now. And it's a really neat addition to the Michigan stuff. And I mean, it's very cool to see that history coming in there. And I wish that Sky had done a little bit more, but reading in on Feiger, he just didn't quite make it, and then he ended up going to LA and conceiving of and writing "My Sharona." You can watch any number of videos on what inspired that. It's a very interesting story, but I like this part of the history of the very Michigan, Detroit based rock coming in after that first wave of the heavier duty acid rock from Detroit, from the MC5 and the Stooges. These guys were just a little bit behind that, but Sky couldn't quite get the traction. And that's what I think led Feiger to go to that different sound. A really shame too. He passed away in 2010, I believe. It's been a while. Been a while since he'd passed away. And he is the younger brother of one Douglas Feiger, the big time Detroit attorney who defended Jack Kevorkian nationally.
All right.
So the Grim Reaper took the wrong Feiger.
Feiger Law? That's the
Feiger Law
with all the hair? The guy with all the hair?
That's his older brother. That's Doug Feiger's older brother.
How about that?
So that's it. It was a lean week on the pickups. Almost was a lean week for you. I will do what I can to find Sky on Spotify, because as we do every week, we like to put up a Spotify playlist to give you some audio samples of the goodies that we're bringing into the collection. So you can hear, maybe correct Steve on UK and correct me on the sound of Sky and whether or not they are indeed a 1970s power pop, or I think they predate that genre a little bit.
Yeah. See if you can convince me.
Okay, we'll see what we can find. Well, onward to the subject at hand. Steve, you added, how many was that? 4 albums to your collection this week? 4 or 5? 5. And me 3 in here. Well, let's just say 2, because I'm still not sold on that Hoist yet. We'll see what happens if it's the double LP makes it still in for me. But this got me thinking. I saw some article, I think a couple of weeks ago, and we've talked about this in the past too, about how many records is really the ultimate number to have in your collection, and whether or not you can have too many. And jokingly, you can say, oh, you could never have too many albums in your collection. But no. I think each of us can say, you know what? Yeah, I think you can.
I agree. It's if everyone has different opinions, and I think with as life goes, as you get older, your thoughts on that does change quite a bit. At least it has for me, especially when you start thinking, well, what do I do with it? Or try moving.
Yeah.
Especially when you got to do most of it instead of calling a mover. Then it really, yeah, it
It
changes your
it
thought.
changes a great deal. And for those that may not be familiar with your history, if you've not followed Steve's channel in the past, if you're new to our podcast, we have on this podcast and Steve on his channel many, many times have discussed the big event in May of 2020. Was it
Yeah,
20?
20. Yeah.
2020. We're here in the Midland, Michigan area. We had just kind of an epic rainstorm that lasted a couple of days. And far upriver, a couple of counties away from the two rivers that connect here in Midland, a couple of dams broke, and you were sent into an evacuation mode and left your house in a hurry. And not to rehash the horrible memories for you, but you lost a lot of vinyl.
Yeah, between vinyl and CDs, 12,000.
Wow.
So it was, yeah, that was a lot of years of collecting. That's for sure. But sometimes things can be a blessing.
You have carried that, and you at the time, we've talked before too, you handled that with such grace and poise that it was amazing. But that leads it directly into this question then. At the time, you were collecting everything you could get your hands on. Anything you saw, whether it was dollar bin or what, you would go to places and go out with armfuls.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, you have this point is it a collection or is it a library? And quite honestly, when you get that large, it's a library. Now, I like libraries. I think those are great. And it's this kind of this thought that someone comes in and goes, do you have this? You go, I do have this.
I do.
And now, no one ever came over to say that, but just in case, I was ready for that, Jim. And you could go back and you could look at a discography. I got the complete discography of this, and it was kind of fun and exciting. It was two very large rooms filled. One was a CD room and one was a record album room, and the box sets were just gigantic amount of box sets. And it you just went down, you just felt good, man. Look at it. I'm surrounded by music.
Yep. The psychological reasoning for we've talked about that in the past too. This is the reasons that we want to collect, and we want to collect to that extent. And I've gone through that myself a couple of times. And I think most record collectors do, where you get to this point, say, I've got too much. I'm going to purge a little bit. I'm going to purge a lot. Back in 1997, I lived in Upper Michigan in the Upper Peninsula, and I'm trying to remember, it was around maybe 4,000 or so, and I cut down almost by half at that time, and I sold a lot because I didn't really feel like moving them, and we were changing our life. We're getting ready to have kids in a couple of years, and it just seemed like a time to pare down. Now I look back at that, and I think with your situation too, well, I regret getting rid of some of this, but not everything. I had a lot of chaff in that collection, but I've now built it back up. I'm nowhere near that number I was, but I'm getting up there again. And Discogs makes it easy to, at a glance, to say, okay, I've got X amount. You can look right at your collection numbers.
Yeah, you figure since 2020, I got 2,800 albums. So that's a lot, and I'm still working, I guess, for a reason. And you're trying to support your habit.
Yeah. You're retired.
Yes.
Not quite.
Yeah, because I got more time. I'm going to go buy more records. Is that really the right decision to make? But when we moved this year, suddenly I'm boxing this stuff up, and I know I'm going to a smaller place. And so even with this, what I had with 2,800, I'm looking and go, this is too much. What am I going to do? And I brought you quite a few records to trade in for credit, a couple boxes of them. And really, it should be more. But then I go to a place and I come back, there's 5 more albums that's going in, because we're looking for something new. We're looking for something different. I mean, that's the music keeps coming. And if I was say, I like the 70s or I like the 60s and that's all I want, I think it's easier to kind of sit there and say, okay, I'm pretty content. I got what I need. I like chasing a lot of the new stuff, maybe
Yep.
a new genre, popping into a rabbit hole, which you got to be careful of, to not get in too deep. But because of that, stuff keeps coming in. Our love for 80s alt rock, or the
Mhm.
college rock. All of a sudden, you find that classic album from them. You go, it's hard to pass that up. You go, wow, I love this stuff.
Or you find one on the periphery like you did with the Long Riders. I've got the one Long Riders album and I'm happy with it. That's not to say if I didn't find another one, I might go, these
Yeah,
guys are pretty good. And I fought that battle too. Here it's, I don't know, it's a little bit different for me being the record store owner side of things because I've got a personal collection, but everything here in the store, I own it. We don't do consignment. So technically speaking, this is my collection
it
also.
is.
Am I saying that right there? But on the personal side of things, I think I've got maybe a third of my collection at home and two-thirds here. And we'll get to the numbers and why that's important in a second. But I've got a finite amount of shelf space behind the counter, of which I consider my play copies here at the store. And for a while there, a year or two ago, I tried holding to this hard, fast thing saying, if
Yeah.
something goes into that shelf, then something comes out. I maintain that shelf. That didn't work because I bought a cheap tote at a couple of cheap totes, new ones. And when something came out of that shelf, I put it in the tote and said, okay, I'll deal with that later. So now I've got a tote and a half full of personal collection stuff that I haven't taken home. I haven't put on the shelf here, but it's there in case I want to go to it.
But I kept reminding you of that, of what you said, and I kept pointing out albums that you could pull out of your
Oh,
collection
yeah. Thank
that,
you. You were
that
being
I will
so
take.
kind.
Yeah, I just you know what? We can stick with this.
We
Just
can
give
do
me that
that.
album, and you're good to go. And you just wouldn't.
I would. Well, sorry about that, Steve. Hey, one of the other cool things about Discogs and the idea that we said you can call up at a moment's notice and see, and depending upon how you organize it, you can break it down into folders and categories and stuff. But right off overall, when you look at your collection, it tells you how many are in there. So I think this came off of something else I saw online, but I challenged you and I did this myself. And for me, it's a challenge regardless because it involved math. What is it? It's like 7 out of every 5 record store owners has trouble with math.
Okay.
That's how I roll with
That
that.
explains prices.
Yeah, great. Thanks. I'm not the brightest bulb when it comes to facts and figures. Facts maybe, but figures no. But I managed through. And so what we did was we took the size of our collection and then we looked at the amount of hours we listened to the collection per week and said, okay, well, how large is the collection and how long would it take us? If we sat down tomorrow and went through our entire collection, how long would it take to listen to it based upon our current listening habits? And again, I've got to put the disclaimer here too, because a lot of folks say, oh, it's a record store, man. It's got to be so cool to be able to listen to records all the time. And yeah, it is kind of cool, but I'm like that contractor who never remodels his house. When I go home,
Yeah.
I don't listen to a lot of vinyl. So I'd have to break that out. And I did this with the numbers, Steve. I kind of looked at, okay, this is the size of my personal collection versus how many hours per week I normally would listen to it. Here's the size of my inventory collection, which is also mine, versus how many hours in the store I listen to it. And let me do my home one first, then we'll get yours and
Yep.
we'll see how that stacks up against. So my personal collection is roughly 1,500 albums, 1,500. And this gets tricky because you can say, okay, some of them are double LPs, some of them are triple LPs, so that increases the listening time. But on average, an album is about 40 minutes worth of music on average. And you can knock that up or down here and there, but we'll say average. So if I have 1,500 albums in my personal collection and they're roughly 40 minutes each, that would be 67,500 minutes worth of music, according to my calculation, or comes down to 1,125 hours total. So personally speaking, at home, on a good week, I will maybe listen to 3 hours a week of music at home in my personal collection, tops 3 hours a week.
Yeah.
So based on those numbers, that works out to 375 weeks or roughly 7.2 years to listen to my
Wow.
personal collection.
Wow.
And that number is like, really, really. But again, that's 3 hours a week. Now it's different here at the store, and I'll get to that in a second. But over 7 years to listen to my personal collection if I were to hold to that schedule.
Boy. Well, I listen to music more and than you, but again, at work, I get that. I mean, and oftentimes you don't even hear it. It's just
Yep.
playing. It's
Yep.
there. You're working. It makes a difference. Yeah, myself, I figure it's about uh during the weekdays, probably about 2.5 hours a day. I
Okay.
really don't watch much TV. I just come up here and my wife watches the TV. So, and then on the weekends, maybe about 5 hours each day is what I listen to. So I came up to about 17 and a half hours of music listening for a week, which is 1,050 minutes. Breaking that down again, thinking of your average, we said the average, was 40 minutes an album.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Unless you got punk rock, then you can drop to 20, but I didn't factor that in. And so it would come up to, I can listen to about 26 albums. It would take me, I have 2,800 albums total. It'd take me 2 years to get through my collection right now. Now, when I was traveling all the time, so my job had me traveling. So now I didn't have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I was gone. Monday, a lot of times I would be gone. I was only listening to about 12 hours a day. 12 hours a week. It took me 3 years to get through my collection. My old collection, though.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, my old collection with 12,000 and just saying 7.5 hours. I'm keeping with the 17 and a half, though it was less at that time because I was traveling.
Yeah.
But it would have took me almost 9 years to get through that.
Wow.
That's 17 and a half hours, 9 years. And now when I figure that math, I don't know if I'll be alive. So, it's like, oh my God. But it is. It's interesting when you do that and you think about it and you go, yeah, what do you do with it even?
Yep.
You have so much, which is something for another discussion we need to talk about is what do you do with a collection?
What do you do?
But I know people, their collections, they even have them in storage containers. They have so much, they have to put it in there. And, obviously you can't listen to, I don't know how you even get at them, or what you do, but it's what they enjoy. You know what? I want this library, to have, a gigantic amount of records. It's, we've talked about hoarding versus whatever, but they have passion for it.
Yep. Let me real quick shift over to the store side and the numbers on that. I do use Discogs as my primary inventory tool here at the store. So when I bring in collections or small batches, I catalog them into Discogs so I can refer to that to say if somebody asks, do you have this? I can very easily call that up. Now, it's not a complete picture because I don't have everything that I've brought in cataloged. I'll talk about that here in a second or two. But, as of right now, cataloged, it's about 8,500 albums cataloged. And then I probably have several thousand more that are in different various stages of getting to. It's a tough thing sometimes. So applying our formula to that 8,500 albums, 40 minutes per album, that comes to 340,000 minutes worth of music here in the store, or 5,667 hours worth. Now, here in the store, unlike at home, the turntable's running constantly. We don't have a television here, don't stream. I run the turntable. I'm that kind of a record store. So roughly speaking, that turntable's running 40 hours a week. Now, not most, but a lot of the collection here are albums that I also have in my personal collection. So I will play those or I will play my personal copies when I have a sealed copy of something or something new like that. Like, say, for example, that new fish, I'll play that open copy. So given that formula with that 5,667 hours total, if I apply the 40 hours per week of spin time, it comes out to 142 weeks or 2.7 years of listening to get through 8,500 albums. That's a little more palatable, but when you think of the numbers versus the time, how many people listen to their turntable and play records for 40 hours in a week?
Yeah. There's one guy, his channel, he listens, he works from home, and he constantly, actually I know a couple of them, and it's so their listening stack's gigantic, what they listen to every week, but their collections are the one I'm thinking of just monumental. I mean, it's so big in the amount that he brings in that he can hear this. Yeah, I read a comment about someone about how do you know if your record collection's too big, and the person says they measured their record collection and by by the size of it, they know if it's too big by how mad their wife gets when a new record comes in the mail. So that's how they measure. I guess I have too much. Huh? I'm really getting in trouble.
Well, you try to intercept that mailman before Patty sees him coming through.
Luckily, I'm home first. So
That's
yeah,
true.
AI technology had said the average record collection's 100 records. And if you have 500, it's considered a large record. Now, that came from AI, so we know it has to be true.
It's got to be true. I run into that a lot with folks, when they're calling to sell, and I still get, 2 or 3 a week. Do you buy collections? Do you buy this? Do that? And the biggest problem, the obstacle I get when people call is say, I've got this huge record collection. Okay, well, what do you have? Oh, it's huge. I've got probably two crates full. Okay, well, maybe to you that is, but that to me is not much. But again, it all depends. Now, the other thing that really kind of helped drive this home for me as a subject this week is I'm currently in the process of, cleaning out the store's storage unit. Here at the store, you've seen our back area, my shame, as I call it. But in addition to that, for the past 4 years, I've maintained a storage unit off-site to hold on to stuff that is really not as important to have in the store, essentially dollar bin stuff and below. Well, the cost of the storage unit, like the cost of everything, has been just increasing incrementally over the past couple of years, to the point where, to me, it's not sustainable to say I'm going to pay $65 a month to store dollar bin records that may or may never sell. So I've been in the process of trying to clean that out, and I'm going to get rid of the storage unit and make room here at the store and have some massive sales on the dollar bin side of things. But what that also did is reminded me that in 4 years ago, in 2020, I bought the largest collection I've ever bought here for the store. And it was an odd time, and I think you might remember this as well. This was right at the leading edge of the pandemic and all the weirdness that was going on with that. And it was kind of a big risk for me at the time to say I'm going to drop a lot of money on a lot of records when everything is a little uncertain right now. And it was a tough call, but I did it, and I'm glad to do it. I'm glad I did it. I still remember to this day, I don't have any pictures from the inside of this, but I took some pictures I'll share here in a second of the process of moving this out. But when this gentleman called, he was down in Saginaw, which is, 15, 20 minutes away from here in Midland. And we talked over the phone 2 or 3 times. And it was one of those things where he said, I've got a large collection. I actually believed it. It wasn't 2 crates when he said, I've got a lot. So he invited me over to take a look at his basement first and foremost, and let's discuss from there. And I went down into this guy's basement in Saginaw, and I was stunned, absolutely and totally stunned. It was well kept. The humidity was controlled down there, and he had thousands and thousands of records. They were stored on you remember seeing where people would make their mod shelves with the cinder block shelving with planks in between. So each of his shelves were 3 records tall, with lower, middle, and a stored on top through there with the cinder blocks. And it stretched the length of his basement, which is easily a 30-foot long basement. And the shelves were packed all the way down, thousands and thousands. Then he took me to the side room, and he says, this is the stuff that I'm trying to get to. I haven't gotten like my storage unit now. And there was a few thousand records in there. All totaled, we kind of guesstimated that the collection was about 7,000 to 8,000 records. And we struck the deal that we're going to purchase. Now, this comes down to the idea that this gentleman was in his 70s and he wasn't quite sure what to do. He'd been collecting all of his life. He didn't have any family members that were going to take over the collection from him. But at the same time, he didn't. Yeah, I see you nodding your head there, Steve. At the same time, he didn't want to just give them away. He wanted to make sure they went somewhere where people would go to enjoy them, while at the same time recouping a little bit for his lifetime investment. So, hence that huge decision. But what struck me the most when I got into this, well, let's share the pictures here first. I think I may have showed these to you. The idea that at the time, that we struck the deal and started talking mid-July, and by August of that year in 2020, we did this. Now, I had made already a couple of trips with my pickup, but then the day came to get everything out of there. I hired some friends of my son and got my son involved in this. Got a U-Haul and a storage unit on the same day, and then started hauling records. So, here we are loading up that storage, or the U-Haul with some of these. And again, young James there hauling stuff in from 4 years ago. My pickup truck was loaded to the hilt with them as well. The inside cab was loaded to them as well. And, we filled that U-Haul up with everything, bringing them here to the store and the storage unit. Now, this gentleman that I got these from, as I mentioned, they were well kept. Most everything was in poly sleeves, temperature controlled, and they were in great condition. But what struck me most, once we got this back and I started going through the collection, all genres were represented. He had mostly rock and roll, classic rock and roll, but there was a decent amount of jazz. There was a decent amount of country in through there as well, and some classical. But what he had done in his collecting phase, and let's pick just like a classic rock, a big one like Fleetwood Mac Rumors. Getting into that collection, there were really no less than 6 or 7 copies of Rumors in the collection. Yeah. So it wasn't like there was 8,000 of different LPs. There were multiple copies of multiple titles, especially the big titles. And what I think that this gentleman had been doing was he would buy a record, and then he would see it again and buy that and compare it to his other one. He was always trying to upgrade and always trying to upgrade. So as I get into this collection and I see there's a title that has got 5 copies of something or 7 copies of something, inevitably there'd be 1 or 2 almost unplayable dollar bin copies, and then they'd work their way up to a pristine copy. Time and time again, that's what I saw throughout this collection, that there will be multiple copies of multiple artists as they go through there. It boggled my mind at the time. Yeah. I saw you nodding your head about, you don't know what to do with it. Yeah. At that certain stage in your 70s.
Yeah. But, when you talk about, you're listening to, there's a number of channels out there that their focus is finding the best copy, and they do buy multiple copies, and they're comparing them, and they're finding out which one's better. And I asked, I've sent questions to a few of them. Do you get rid of the other ones? And a lot of times they say, no, we just keep them, keep them all. Okay, but are you going to listen to the crappy ones still? You're going to put that one back on? Probably not. But it's what they enjoy doing. And it's that hunt, that look for, this is the best. This pressing is the one.
It's a little bit better. Now, earlier I mentioned Herbie Mann, and what he had done in this collection with a lot of stuff was he would try to be an artist completist. And jokingly, I said we're going to have the largest Herbie Mann collection. Hang on here. This is going to get ugly for a second. I've not cataloged these, but I brought these out of the storage unit. And this is just a small smattering of the different Herbie Mann stuff that's in here. So there's one. Let me get them all out here, Steve. This is going to be, here's 2. Here's another handful. Jeez. And another handful. And again, there's multiple copies of a lot of these. Okay, so this is just the Herbie Man that I've pulled out of the storage unit this week. And I think there's more back there still that's in there. Herbie Man, of course, you can't go wrong with his shirtless copy
The
of
famous
Push
cover.
Push. He looks great there. Now, this is cool and everything if you're a Herbie Man fan, but I've already got a selection of probably 30 Herbie Man from various other sources in our shelves, and they're all priced in that $2 to $3 range, and a lot of them in the dollar bin. So now with me cleaning out that, there's another Herbie Man here. With me cleaning out the storage unit, what do? What do I do?
Well, viewers, if you are a Herbie Man fan, I would say Radio Wasteland's the one to call to get what you're missing, because he's going to have it all.
Herbie Man sure did some sexy album covers, didn't he?
Yeah, not just that one.
And I mean, it's jazz flute, so it's not everyone's cup of tea, is it?
Ron Bundy and him. Ron Burgundy.
Burgundy. There you go. Sorry.
Burgundy.
So, that's what I'm kind of running into on this as well. In going through this, I found, and I don't want to say I forgot about them, because I didn't. I just kind of pushed the contents of the storage unit aside and said, I'll get to it when I get to it. Well, I got to get to it because I no longer wish to continue paying for it. So now I'm dealing with the remnants of the collection, and again, all the good stuff I've gone through and we've farmed out of the store here in the past 4 years. And I think all total, out of that 7,000 that we estimated that to be 7,000 plus, I think that I've gone through and cataloged about 3,500 of them and sold about 2,700 according to my records. So I still have a good selection of stuff here in the store that I'm farming for. So that was a good investment on my part. I think, we're pulling that stuff in that I can draw off of this collection as inventory over 4 years. And now all of a sudden we're going to have a huge push of Herbie Man.
Yeah.
Push.
Yeah. I'd read one on their comment once. They said, to me, the person says a collection, if you can listen to one album a day for a full year and get through your whole collection, you got the right size of collection. Anything more than that is too large. Now, again, it's all opinions and stuff. So I was thinking about, albums I have that, I've paid for, obviously I paid for them. I didn't steal them, but that I don't play because they're really, like these Zamrocks, they're original Zamrocks. They're in terrible shape. As a collector, they're highly valuable, but it's just something that I'm not going to be putting on the turntable because they're really not made to, they're not that playable. They don't skip, but they a lot of crackle. So we have these kind of albums that we do put in our collection that we're not going to spin, but they have that, it's what we collect. I guess it's collectibles, right?
This also goes to, I think, some of the stories we've heard over the past couple of years of younger collectors who don't even own a turntable. They'll buy the vinyl, open the vinyl, have the vinyl, and yet stream the music. So they still get kind of sort of that experience of owning it. I guess it's each of their own in that. But no, that it comes down to, and I hate to say it like this, almost a question of mortality at some point, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think back, it's been 4 years. I have not stayed in contact with the gentleman I bought this huge collection from. And I've bought other large collections since then, but nothing in that scope. The punk collection that we talk about was only about 500. I brought in about 1,200 2 years ago, the last time I brought a big one in, but nothing in this scope that was this wide of a range with that multiple copies of everything just to lead from. And I think that, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I remember talking to this gentleman when we were negotiating the purchase. He was basically just saying, I'm up there in years. I don't get to listen to them much anymore. They're in my basement. I can't go up and down. It's time.
Yeah.
And I think that I guess there comes a point in time when you're collecting that you just know.
Yep. I totally agree. You just have to decide, especially you have a spouse. Do you hang them with it? And again, I think we can do a whole broadcast on this because it's something that is important to talk about. And it's something that I've been planning to do anyway on one of mine. Just, what am I going through right now? And my thought, it changes. So,
Yeah.
but now I'm not ready. I'm happy. It does take a couple years. Do I need to purge some more? I do. And because I just bought 5 more records. So, but I keep looking in there and trying to decide, am I really going to listen to this one? I mean, do I need to have this? And, I gave you some albums that were decent. There were some that was crap, but there were some good ones that other people were excited about, but I'm not going to listen to it. So why keep it here? Take my space.
I hate to brag a little bit about this, but I think that I'm in a nice position when it comes to saying my personal collection is this. If I decide that there's something in my collection that I don't want, or if I find an upgrade, I turn around and I put it out on the shelf here. So I have that ability to do that, where I think a lot of collectors would have to make that decision call. Do I take them into trade? Do I try to sell them outright? Do I do something other? Again, I don't want to like put it out there as like, oh, I get to do this, but I get to do this.
Yeah. No, it's great. And sometimes it is hard. You get that upgrade. And I have a few, suddenly you get a mobile fidelity, but I have the other one. Well, I may still play the other one because I don't want to wear out my mobile fidelity.
Yeah.
But consider it takes me 2 years to get through my collection. I mean, am I really going to wear out any album? Probably not.
You'd have to play it multiple times, with the needle wearing down before you even get close to that.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other thing, when we looked at it, I said 2 years, but my listening time, it went, is a lot of it spent listening for upcoming videos. So on my Sunday show, I listen to every album at least twice. So that takes up a lot of my listening time right there. And then you do other ones. I'm ranking right now 1992 favorite albums. So I did pull all those, but I'm listening to them again and again. And so I'm not getting through the rest of my collection.
Never-ending battle for us collectors. Please feel for us.
It does. Now with wintertime, I'm going to have downtime, due to the seasonality. I'm going to be listening to a whole lot more and, pulling stuff, but it also means I'll probably find a record store to go buy something new.
You'll continue to add to it.
Yeah.
You have to work on that. Something goes in, something comes out that exactly. I failed at. So what do you, dear viewers, think about this? If you wanted to do the math, I think it's really as simple as counting the number of albums in your collection and just round up accordingly for double albums. Multiply that by 40 minutes each to get your total minutes, and then divide that by the number of hours per week. See how long. 7.5 years for my personal stuff, Steve. I don't know if I can do it.
Yeah, if things go wrong, we at least know we got something to do for a few years.
There we go. We can pull up and spin, provided we've got the power to do so.
Yeah.
I've got the Victrola, so I mean it'll hurt the records. I'll get one listen out of them, but I'll get a listen.
I'll have to get some solar.
There you go. Well, let us know what you think. I mean, how many records are too many records? Are you content with what you've got, be it 1 or 2 cratefuls or 1 or 2 roomfuls? And I know collectors on both ends of that spectrum. Yeah. It comes down to, like you said, where is your comfort zone? Mm-hmm. And do you want to have stuff that you're not going to listen to, but dang it, it's in my collection?
Yep. If it makes you happy, and you're still alive and you haven't been killed by your significant others, keep it going.
That's the important part. Hide the mail. Bribe the mailman to kind of set stuff off under the bushes until you can grab it out there. All right, Steve. As always, a very interesting discussion. I'm going to have to look at my listening habits at home now, I think. But I'm happy with what I got going here at the store. So I think it balances out nicely.
I think so.
All right. Well, you have a great week, sir. And thank you again to everyone for watching and listening to 2 guys talking about records. So until next week, my name is Jim. I own a record store and I collect and I listen to a lot of vinyl per week regardless.
And I'm Steve and I'm a record collector and I got a couple years worth of listening, so I'm going to be busy for a while.
Go get busy, man.
Yeah.
Have a good week, Steve. We'll talk to you next time.
No, you too. Bye, everyone.